Let's talk Suicide Season. Bring Me the Horizon. Their sophomore album, sophomore debut, follow up to Count Your Blessings, and sort of a change in their sound. So here's my little history on Suicide Season. I did not know who Bring Me the Horizon was prior to that album coming out. I had never heard of them. And at the time I was barely getting into like a lot of the metalcore stuff, so a lot of the music was hit or miss for me. Just because there was a lot of stuff I heard that I was just like, I don't know, I wasn't too into it. But there was a lot of stuff I heard that I did. Bring Me the Horizon was one of those bands that I got into them when, Suicide Season come out, and that was their most recent album, and it was super popular. I was definitely one of them. Of course, I was a big fan of, the singles, Chelsea Smile, Diamond is Unbreakable, stuff like that. I eventually went back and listened to Count Your Blessings and all that. And yeah, the two have very different sounds, and I know that was something a lot of previous fans complained about, I guess, because, I remember in 2008 when, if a band, God forbid, a band decided they wanted to change their sound up a little bit and be like, they changed their sound, they're going mainstream, it sounds like shit, this is awful, fuck this band, I'm out. And it was like, dude, come on, relax a little. While their sound was described as more the deathcore sound in Count Your Blessings, Suicide Season was much more metalcore, I would say. While I was listening to Suicide Season, I was having some thoughts of like, Bring Me the Horizon had a pretty unique sound that was kind of their own once Suicide Season came out, that I thought was quite interesting while listening to the album. I was like, no, because I was trying to think, and I felt like no other band really sounded like Bring Me the Horizon. They're very much their own beast. It's been several years, actually, I want to say. I was like, it's been a while since I've heard this. I wanted to revisit it. I was curious. I was like, does this album hold up? Let me tell you my initial thoughts with the first time I heard the album. I initially thought it was some kind of concept album revolving around topic of suicide. I thought maybe, the vocalist, lyricist, Ollie Sykes, he knew someone that took their life tragically, or he knew friend of a family, someone, maybe he like somehow secondhand knew someone. Turns out I was completely wrong. Do come to find that it's not a concept album. Every song just has its own personal meaning to it and is written about something completely different. They're all about different topics, and I decided to look up the lyrics of each song and just try and just look up information in general. Oh goodness, most of the songs were actually about his addiction to ketamine and him dealing with that. Probably 4 out of the 10 songs relate to or have to do with his addiction to ketamine. It's still interesting. And then I come to find out that the album cover that was supposed to signify, I didn't know what that signified before. I just thought it looked cool. I was like, it's just, metal as fuck album cover, whatever. It's fucking cool. I've come to find out it actually signified the idea of just like spilling your guts to the world, because Suicide Season was kind of the make or break album for Bring Me the Horizon. They weren't finding much success after Count Your Blessings, and they kind of were just like, all right, we'll do one more. If it does really well, we'll keep going. If it doesn't, we'll call it quits. One of my favorite songs on there, I mean, it's most people's favorite songs, is the single, is Chelsea Smile. One of Bring Me the Horizon's most popular songs. He talks about having a secret, basically, and me personally, again, because it was called Suicide Season, I thought the album was a concept album about suicide. I thought it was like, the secret is that he knows someone is having thoughts of suicide or having thoughts of wanting to kill themselves, and he's keeping a secret because they told him to, or whatever. So that's what I thought. Yeah, Chelsea Smile is actually one of the songs that he wrote about his ketamine addiction. I found it interesting like that, and it was written in blood. I was like, well, that's literally about a suicide note. Like, where did this come from? I find out that entire song is a quote of a poem by a famous poet. Their final poem that they wrote, I guess they complained that they didn't have ink, so they wrote a poem, and in the poem they complained that there was no ink left. So when they wrote their suicide note, they wrote it in blood. And then after they wrote that poem, they immediately took their life, tragically. On a lighter note, I do want to talk about other songs that I genuinely do enjoy. I think what's really fun about Suicide Season is that the song that clocks just under 2 minutes it's called Football Season is Over. Classic song. It's got classic lyrics. Party till you pass out, drink till you're dead, dance all night till you can't feel your legs. Classic. Just fucking, like, I mean, if you saw Bring Me the Horizon live, you chanted these lyrics at least once. because they always, I think even now they probably still play it. They probably still do to this day. I don't know. I haven't seen Bring the Horizon live in a long time. Yeah, party till you pass out, drink till you dead, man. You can drink to that. Cheers. Yeah, the other song that I think is such a cool classic. It's a classic in a weird way, but they have another song. It's the second to last song on the album called, this one's a long title. Part of me almost misses this trend of early 2000s like pop punk and metalcore and stuff like that. This trend of having song titles that were just stupid long. I don't know why they did that, man. This Bring Me the Horizon song, it's a classic. Second last track on the album. It's called No Need for Introductions. I've read about girls like you on the backs of toilet doors. Yep, that's the whole thing. There is actually a comma in that title. It's one of those trends that I'm like, part of me is glad that trend is gone. But part of me is also like, I don't know, can someone bring it back? That song is just, so it's just under a minute. So it's probably like a couple lyrics. It starts with this like very soft, like jazzy piano thing. You're like, ooh, very nice, very calm, relaxing, all right. And then it immediately busts into like a fucking just hardcore, like, it like blast beats and everything. Like it's going ham, dude. Ollie Sykes is just like fucking on the mic. And you're just like, fuck, dude. You're like, damn, this is going crazy. And then like the final lyrics of the song is just, I will quote it verbatim. It is, after everything you've put me through, I should have fucking pissed on you. And he fucking yells it. Ollie Sykes just belts that shit. And it's, to this day, just one of those lyrics that, honestly, I don't care where I am. I don't care what I'm doing. You play that song, I will just be like, yo, let's go. Remember the Horizon would play that song live back in the day, and it was great because it was just the crowd yelling those lyrics, and it's pretty funny. I don't know. It's like a classic in a way. It's one of those, you put it on, and instead of being like, oh man, yeah, I'm having feelings and I'm remembering all this is really hitting hard right now, hitting my emotions and everything. No Need for Introductions is a song that's like, yeah, fuck it, pissing on people. Yeah, hell yeah, dude. And you're just like, what? It's right up there with, football season is over, where football season is over. It's just like, nah, I don't want to feel anything. I just want to get hypey for a second. Fantastic songs. I mean, goddamn. Listening to them again, I was just like, oh yeah. Bangers right here. Bangers. And I mean, on top of that, another banger. Bring Me the Horizon had several songs people could chant. Diamond is Unbreakable was another one. It had the classic chant, we will never sleep because sleep is for the weak. And we will never rest till we're all fucking dead. That was a chant. Let me tell you, they didn't have to do shit. Ollie Sykes just walked out on stage. He would sing the first few words. He's like, we will never sleep. And he just let the crowd finish it. Listen to that song again, I was just like, oh yeah, it brought me back. It's funny actually, Diamond's Breakable is kind of like, how Third Eye Blind wrote that song, Semi-Charmed Life. That's what it was called. You know how they wrote that, and it was like, oh, it was this happy song, but then you found out it was about meth, and you're like, oh shit. That's kind of what Diamonds Unbreakable is about. You're like, hell yeah, this hardcore song, we're like, fuck you, we're not gonna sleep, we're not gonna rest or anything like that. But then it turns out it's a pretty heavy song actually. If you really looked at the lyrics, I believe that's one of the songs that was about Ollie Sykes' ketamine addiction. But man, that was the, one of the party songs right there. They would play that and the crowd would go absolutely ape shit over it. But to overall summarize just kind of my thoughts on Suicide Season, again, found it interesting that apparently it was actually not a well-received album, which I think is funny because I feel like Suicide Season really brought Bring Me the Horizon into the mainstream. I guess it changed their fan base. So their fan base went from the standard deathcore fan base to what was like the scene kid metalcore fan base at the time, which was probably a much bigger market. It was able to help them expand outward too, because 2008 to 2011, while it was this scene kid metalcore kind of thing happening, very slowly over the course of those years, it transitioned and became something else. Bands went one of two routes, pretty much, where they either said, okay, let's just go all the way full force into the instrumental side and make it heavy and just make it heavier and heavier. And they wanted to just go, really chug more and be much more metal, or go a hard rock route. Basically, a lot of times they just kind of went with a hard rock route, or they went the other route where they maybe got like a more of a pop sound while still retaining some of those rock elements they're known for. And Bring Me the Horizon was definitely part of that movement, and as much as Suicide Season wasn't well received, I mean, hell, brought so much popularity to Bring Me the Horizon that they were part of what I remember being called the second British invasion. I believe it was AP Magazine who was coining this term, and I agreed with it because I felt like it was happening quite a bit. Because keep in mind also, when Bring Me the Horizon was getting popular, there was a lot of other metalcore and like scene metalcore bands that were getting popular that were from the UK, and there was even bands not in the metalcore scene that were from the UK getting popular and coming to the States. Yeah, Suicide Season, while it wasn't well received at the time, I know now people look back at it and say like, yeah, it's a good album. I definitely listen to it and think, yeah, that's a solid album. It's decent. Is it the best? Is it one of my favorite albums of all time? No, I personally wouldn't say that, but I can definitely go back and listen to it anytime and enjoy it for what it is, enjoy it for what it did. And I will say for sure, listening to it, I was like, this is very unique of a sound. I can't think of any other metalcore album from that time period that sounded like Suicide Season. It is very much its own beast, its own thing. Almost nothing else sounds like it. And I think that's something that it really has going for it. So do I see it becoming a super huge classic that we highly recommend, similar to the likes of something like The Black Parade? No. Do I see it as an album that many people will look back on it fondly and every once in a while will pop back in and listen to it again? Absolutely. It'll definitely be looked back on fondly. I would say definitely Suicide Season is worth checking out again. If you haven't listened to it in a while, go back, give it another listen. You know, give it your time again. It's fun to listen to. It's fun to look back on it and look back on what it was and what it did. I don't know if anyone else thought this, but man, it felt like we entered a new competition of guitar playing. Like, who could chug the lowest? Let me tell you, it got to the fucking point. They had one song in there that was in drop G. Man, those strings, my strings were just like barely hanging on. They were just like that's what they're. That was the sound they were making. Like, I was like, I'm barely hanging on. I need some like fucking 1-inch strings here in order to like get a proper sound out of these bastards.